Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you just want to get settled in while we wait for the other attendees to join, and then I'll go ahead and introduce you all to our speaker and walk you through our agenda for today. So the focus of this webinar is going to be on the principles of the user experience and how it can be used to create a successful website. So let me go ahead and introduce ourselves. If you could just go on to the next slide, please, Salvo. Perfect, thank you. So I am Stella. I'm hosting the webinar today, and I'm an account executive here at ClerksWell. And then we have Salvo Profita here with us, and he is our head of consultancy here, and he will be walking you through the webinar today. And then ClerksWell, what kind of company are we? We are an award-winning digital agency based in London. We specialize in Microsoft technology and we're an established Microsoft Gold partner. We offer a wide range of services, all based on the Microsoft stack, including website development on the Sitecore and Umbraco platforms, hosting on Azure, and internal communications and document management services within Microsoft 365. We are technical experts. We have a great team of people who really understand the technology and can tailor it to our clients' requirements. We value a partnership approach. Sorry, we've got some feedback there. We value a partnership approach, which brings continual benefits to our clients. We've been in business for over 20 years and have had some of our clients, some of who I think have actually joined this webinar today since we became established. And lastly, why are we holding this webinar? As experts in the user experience and website development, we take great interest in keeping up to date with the best practices surrounding these concepts. We always want to make sure we can offer the latest and best advice to our clients. So the agenda for today, if you could just go on to the next slide, please. As I just mentioned, Salvo will be talking to you today, and he'll be going through what the user experience is, the process behind the user experience, good and bad examples of UX, and takeaways from this, and then the next steps. So handing over to you, Salvo.
Okay, thank you, Stella. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to clear up what are often a few misunderstandings about user experience. It often gets conflated with other types of experience and so on. So the definition I'm going to use for today comes from the Oxford Journal Interactive in Computers, who have been doing research into human-machine interfaces for quite a long time. And their definition, which I agree with, the goal of UX design in business is to improve customer satisfaction and loyalty through the utility, ease of use, and pleasure provided in interaction with a product. What does that mean? It means make your products pleasant to use. It's that simple. This applies to all products, but for the purposes of this presentation, because this is our area of expertise, I'll be talking really in the context of websites. The product in this context is a website or an intranet. Much of the same principles apply. Okay, moving on. So there's a number of terms that are interrelated, often get confused with each other or misunderstood. So I'm going to just have a few definitions here of some terms that you will no doubt, if you've worked in this space, heard before. IA, information architecture, I think that's pretty clear. That concerns itself with the actual content of your website, the structure, the navigation hierarchies, metadata, terms for the taxonomies, and so on. It's all about what's on the website and its structure. Usability, this is concerned with making sure that your website actually works for all of the users. So it does what it's supposed to do. It's accessible for people with various, for example, partially sighted and various other impairments. And it's concerned with the kind of more quantitative things like how many clicks is it to achieve a certain goal? How do the interactions work? Is the performance well in terms of page loads? Moving on, we have the design. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Again, design gets used for all sorts of things, but when we say design, we're talking about a creative design. That's your iconography, your imagery, the fonts that are in use, the colors, all of that. Get your design right and your website looks great and it portrays the right impression of your organization. And then we move on to user experience, what we're talking about. User experience isn't really just one thing. It's all of the three things I've just discovered, but it's pulling all of those together and adding extra emphasis on strengthening the engagement with your brand and making the experience generally enjoyable and hopefully memorable. So you will come back and use the website again. There's a couple of other terms which we're not going to go into in this session, but I will just cover them to avoid any confusion. There's customer experience. You could think of customer experience as a next level beyond the user experience, where it takes into account all of the interactions between a user and your actual organization. So it's not just a website. It could be things like if you have bricks and mortar stores, how they are, do they have coffee in them? What about your sales process? What about post-sales support, customer service? All of these things, it's all of the interactions that I have with your organization. That's what that is about, not just the website. And finally, this doesn't get used a lot, but it is used increasingly, employee experience. You can kind of think of that as customer experience, except between an employee and their employer. So it's all about the aspects of working for your organization, the benefits, the well-being, onboarding processes, and so on. Okay, moving on. Little summary then. What is user experience? It is all of your IA, your usability of your design, that informs your user experience. Your user experience actually takes it further to make sure that it is a great experience, it is enjoyable to use, you don't have any problems. And then if you add in broader customer interactions with your organization, add that to user experience, you get the full customer experience. It might be useful to use a metaphor to actually relate the detail of these things to something that's more understandable. I'm going to assume everyone here is at some point eating a meal in a restaurant. How would these terms equate to that experience if the product is your meal and your organization is a restaurant? Okay, IA. So that would be effectively the structure of your meal. How many courses? What mains will you have? What side dishes? Is it meat or fish? Is it vegetarian? Will it be vegan? It's the structure of your meal. And if that's done well on the right, the outcome will be a balanced meal. Usability, that then means actually cooking your meal and make sure you cook it properly, use good ingredients such that your user enjoys a decent meal. It's the basics really. Moving on, the design. Okay, in this metaphor, then that one's quite simple really. That's making sure your meal is well presented. You might have a garnish on it, attractive tableware and wine glasses, delicate presentation, not too fussy. You might end up then with your customer and actually sharing a meal on social media. They may Instagram it. And moving on, UX, user experience, that is really the important thing. That's making sure that your meal is delicious. It's very well seasoned, uses the best ingredients, all the details around it just right. The wine is well paired, it's served at the right temperature, you don't wait too long between courses. The outcome of that is memorable meals enjoyed, and your customer is very likely to recommend your organization to their friends. And finally, if we equate a customer experience to this, well, then that's adding in all of the extra things. So that'd be your the service, the price, the booking process, the general restaurant ambience, how easy it is to get there, all the wider things beyond the meal. That then ensures if you get that right, then your customer is highly likely to become a regular, try many of the other dishes, and certainly recommend your organization to their friends. Okay, hopefully that's fairly clear then in what we're talking about and how it fits into other designy UX, IA type things. So we're moving to how do you actually establish your user experience? What is the process? Okay, so along the top we have a fairly generic process for the early stages of a website project that leads up to actually developing it. For those of you who work in this area, more familiar with it, you might have used a different process, but broadly, these are the kind of things that happen. And it wouldn't necessarily be sequential, there'd be iteration within that. But for the purposes of this, we'll go through them step by step. So just starting off, you want to build a website, you want to ensure it has a fantastic user experience. Your starting point will be your overall objective. Why are you actually rebuilding a website or building one, you modernizing it, you broaden the content range. You need to understand that. Based on that, there's a number of research activities that take place. I've listed just a few of them. The precise ones that would be done in any situation depend on the specifics, but certainly you would review an existing website. If there is one, you'd have a look at analytics, understand how people are using it, weak spots. You would want to establish personas, i.e. effectively segment your users into different audiences so you can treat them each in the best way. You would do some interviews. This is my favorite technique. I just like to talk to people. I like to talk to stakeholders within the organization who have ideas or think they have ideas of how the website should behave, what it should do, and certainly representatives of the different audience groups who actually use your website. You need to talk to these people. I find one-on-one is very good. You can do surveys and so on to add an extra dimension, but that's my preference, and you should speak to at least a few. You might review competitor websites or similar websites and just generally sites the clients like. Okay, a lot of research. Get embedded in the space. Moving on, you would want to then develop a list of requirements. So your requirements are really, they're just a set of statements of what the website has to be capable of, but not how that capability will be realized. You're just writing down the things it must be able to do, the experiences it must provide. Don't worry at all how that happens yet at this stage. Lots of people here may have worked on requirements, and some people refer to them use cases, user stories, sometimes user journeys or requirements or business requirements. They have different emphases, but ultimately they're just ways of expressing what the website needs to be able to do, because you have to know that obviously before you actually physically design it and build it. A couple of example requirements there, but of course there could be any level of detail, any format. So we now get into the next stage, where you actually might start designing and building a prototype of your website. What is a prototype? It's very simple. It's an online, it doesn't have to be online, but it should be certainly best practice. It's an online model of the website that people can interact with. It should be fully navigable and generally show the flow of the different user journeys, all the unique types of content, the features, your interactions, all of that. Preferably consider responsive designs for that. Build it into your prototype. Quick note on tools, if anyone's fancying maybe doing a little bit of user experience work on their own website. Good tools to use. I use Axure. It's a kind of professional grade tool, very good for model interactions. Steep learning curve. I wouldn't recommend anyone picking that up just for casual use. Figma is another good tool, very good for collaboration. It makes the process of moving into design seamless, really, certainly easier. Balsamiq is I think it's free online tool. That's very good for beginners. It's very drag and droppy, put your things onto the page and so on, but it's lacking in features, but it's generally pretty good. You can actually use paper prototypes, which is just doing it by hand on wireframe sketches on bits of paper. It's certainly good in very early stages to bounce some ideas around, but at some point you should make it interactive such that you can actually sort of test it in a much better way. A few notes on prototypes: they should always be fairly lo-fi. Don't start coloring them in using loads of imagery, because it will then confuse what you're trying to achieve with a prototype, which is to define user experience with the actual creative design, which comes later. A quick example of a prototype, a wireframe. Here's one we did recently. It is an educational website aimed at children at all levels. This is an example wireframe. As you can see, very little in the way of design flourishes. It's just saying what's going to be on there, how the navigation work, buttons, etc. And it supports most user journeys. So if I'm going to do a search, I'll click on search. We get an example of the search results. Explains there will be filters, what will be on there. Again, as I say, no design, no color at this stage. You don't need that. Then I'll click through to a result. This would be a content page. In this case, it's all about cell biology. and it will show the interactions. Because this is an educational site that people will be embedding themselves, they'll be coming here to actually learn. They'll be on this website for a while. I've put in a little interaction to see all the contents for particular topics and quickly jump around, find out where the quiz is, etc. Anyway, point is, you are modeling everything that's on the website that's unique, but you're not doing any design elements. Moving on, once you have this prototype, user testing, very important. Often doesn't happen, but it is important. And it doesn't have to be a big process. You can keep it fairly low key, but as a minimum, identify some representatives of all of the audiences, set some tasks and watch them doing it, and discuss it afterwards. Go through the process with them, and then find out where people are struggling, find out any improvements they've got, write it all down, discuss with the client, and then make changes accordingly. You can do more advanced user testing where there are tools that monitor people's eyes and so on, and they certainly have value, but I think they're generally for more very specific things and quite higher budgets. Last stage, creative design. So we have now a working model of the website. We know what's going to be on it, how navigations work, what interactions, etc. It's been tested. We know it's good. So we do the creative design, and that's where you think about a specialist designer thinks about all of the imagery, the fonts. Said before, they would get brand guidelines from organizations such they can represent their brand and the brief, the kind of impression that they wish to portray on a website. And you would then get a design, which I'm going to go to another example here, which is applicable to the wireframe you just saw. So the wireframes we just went through are here, but represented as actual designs, what they would look like. So again, if we do that journey earlier, we'll do a search, get our search results. Now we have nice design and iconography, so a developer knows what to build. We click through to result. Here we are again on a content page. It's very clear how this thing is going to work and look now. Again, the interactions are modeled in the design, so it's completely non-ambiguous as to what has to be built. Okay, from there, really, the project would then get handed over to developers who would build it. Doesn't mean that the UX consultant, designer go away, because there often is iterations, changes made, things are rethought, but these are the primary steps in arriving at a very good user experience. Talking good user experience, let's have a small number of examples of what I think is done very well. There's nothing advanced about any of these, they're simple things, but let's go through them. Okay, DirectGov, I generally think they get things right. It's generally very useful, the processes they have on there. We're doing that, passport application. Let's step through it and have a look. Okay, so straight off the bat, there is some information, not too much, but it's the information you need at this stage before you start the process. And then we'll go into it. Okay, first principle, it's one question per screen. Some people might think, well, isn't that just a bit too simple? Possibly, but you need to consider one of the most important things when you're thinking about user experiences. You have to consider how often will people use any given interaction, and how often will it be used across all people. So in this scenario, you think about it, it's for anyone applying for a passport will do that a very small number of times in their life. So there's no point making the process more advanced, making it more configurable, because people won't use it. They won't remember. They just want to be able to do it as quickly as possible the first time. However, it will be used an enormous number of times by potentially anyone in the country at some point sooner or later, and that means people at all levels. So it has to be, again, extremely simple to use first time, and that's people, all sorts of accessibility requirements have to be catered for. So moving on, there's one question straight away that I splits you into different audiences because the process is slightly different depending on where you live. I live in the UK. Okay, you live in UK. Again, it tells you the steps you're going to go through, information you'll need up front. Very, very useful. Good user experience. Let's move on. Date of birth. I'm not really born in that year. Okay, so first step, digital passport photo. Warns you, you've got to do that. Different options. If you continue, you're going to go for the doing it online process by uploading digital photo. Again, step by step, you're going to do this now. Here are very, very simple, clear instructions with images, giving examples of good and bad photos. It's just the right amount of instruction. It's not a load of dense text, not too much, and it's not too little. It's just right. They've got that right. And we can continue, but I won't. One improvement they can make to this, because no one gets anything perfectly right, is that because it is actually it is a multi-stage process, you could certainly have a progress bar at the top with a little label for each stage indicating where you are, and maybe even a save button so you come back later. But that's not too criminal. Generally, they've got that right. It's a very simple process. Another one, British Gas registration. Again, I think they get that right. It's essentially a form. Registration process is something everyone does very often, so you've got to make them simple. And again, so many websites don't really get them right. So first thing, as soon as you're in a field, it highlights it so you know where you are, and it tells you immediately you're in the field whether it's valid or not. Not only that, it tells you exactly what's wrong with it. Good usability. Don't wait till someone submits the form before telling them something's wrong. And we do tell them something's wrong. Tell them exactly what's wrong. So we move on. Move on to the actual field. Again, nice, big, clear fields, well structured. Again, if I start putting a number in there, okay, it tells you immediately, well, perhaps someone is called 1, but it doesn't look right, so it tells you that. Address picker, okay, pretty basic stuff. You'd expect that for sure. Oh, okay, yep, well spotted, invalid postcode. Okay, takes you to the bottom. Again, terms and conditions you have to agree to. It's not cluttering up the page. We put in a terms and conditions straight right there. Very clear checkbox. More importantly, you haven't got 3 or 4 checkboxes at the bottom with confusing default options about signing up to emails and so on, where when someone that just wants to register has to parse the text and work out where they have to click or unclick because they don't want to get loads of marketing emails. Next step, reference number. Okay, as I said, no one gets everything perfect. You've got to put your reference number in here. So it has examples of where you can find them. Very good. Make that nice and easy so people can find a reference number. But should have said up front that if you're going for registering, you will need your registration so someone can go off and find the bill or whatever they need to do. So drop a mark there, British Gas, but otherwise, well done. Well done. Okay, a couple of little things. I wouldn't say these are trends. You've seen them a while. They're simple things I like, so consider them if you're considering UX for your own website. Estimated reading time. Lots of websites don't have this, but if you've got a website that's more sort of bloggy or a lot of news, offering sort of content people expected to go and browse and read. Tell them how long it takes. Don't let them click in it. Tell them in the search results or wherever you show a list of content, 2 minutes to read, 6 minutes to read. It's useful information. Not always, but depending on the website, it's useful information. A similar thing, not always applicable, can be used well, progress indicators. So if we have a look at this website, says TechCrunch. I'm not saying it's particularly great or bad website, but if you have a look in the top right, you will see a little green cross. As you scroll down, that becomes a little progress bar. Tells you how far through the page you are. Now you might think quite correctly, well, isn't that pointless? Because on the right you have a scroll bar in your browser that generally indicates how far through you are. Yes, in most cases, apart from when you have a situation, for example, a news article that has then 20 pages of comments beneath it, and a scroll bar would be misleading. So it can be useful, just use it judiciously if you do. Certainly have the time to read on a page. Links to highlights. Okay, this is a nice little thing actually. This is something that you can put into any website. You don't actually have to build into it. I'm sure all of you have hyperlinks to other pages, and some of you may have hyperlinks to a particular place on a page, which you can do if that target page has anchors on it and is built in that way. But it's a feature that Google introduced into Chrome. There might be in other browsers now where it's very easy now to link to any part of a page, regardless of whether it's been designed to have anchors based on the text, and highlight that text. So if we look here, I'll click on this. And as you see, that's gone halfway down a page, and a cat of Sianikova, one of our project managers, is highlighted. So that's a little technique for linking that you can use tomorrow if you want. If anyone wants to know how to do that, I just mail in. It's very simple. I give them an example, but it's quite useful when you want to go to very specific pages on a website that perhaps is out of your control. Bad user experience. Okay, bad user experience. Often hard to describe, but I think everyone knows it when they get to it. It's the kind of thing that makes you swear when you're using a website or just click away. It is amazing how many companies still do very basic errors. One of the most annoying things is drop downs. You've got to choose from a drop down. It's too long, it's not sorted, it's a right fiddle. For some reason, currency exchange sites seem to be very guilty of this. There's a couple. Here we are, nice currency converter, it's been designed, looks okay. When you click into it, if you're not one of the top currencies though, you have to scroll down a very long unsorted list, which I just simply don't understand. It is very easy to make a list sorted. In their defense, they have got a search, so you can search. So it's not so bad, but all the same, why not just sort your list? And here's another example that's kind of the opposite, really. We have a currency converter here. Great. I'm going to click into it. Okay, here's my list, and it is alphabetically sorted, but they offer a window that only shows 3 at a time. Very poor user experience, a lot of scrolling, and not only that, you can't even search for it. So though yes, it is alpha sorted, you've got to scroll through a tiny list to find what you need. Another no-no, terribly annoying. Some websites will automatically start playing something audibly. Never do that. Automatic audio is always disorientating. Usually it's adverts, but you get some websites that just start playing, say, a video from the homepage straight away. Not good, not cool. Now, Netflix generally is pretty good user experience, certainly looks nice, but they do something similar to previous where I won't go into it actually because we're starting to run low on time, but I'm sure if you're using Netflix, you'll all experience this. You're browsing through what to watch, your cursor grazes over something you're not interested in for a millisecond and it starts playing a trailer for it. You didn't ask it to. It's very annoying. Or even worse, you're browsing, you click on something to find out more about it, but the default is to start playing a trailer. That shouldn't be the default. The default should be give you the information, then you can choose to play the trailer or watch it. Finally, a couple of points. Ambiguous toggles. All right, this is something that comes up more often on mobiles, and I'm sure you've all experienced. Sometimes there's a switch. It's very unclear whether hitting the switch is going to do the thing it says, or whether the switch indicates the current state. So you're saying, well, do I do this to follow, or does that mean I'm already following? So be careful about those. And also never try and be too clever. I don't know if you can see this that clear on the screen, but on the right, two pop-ups. You look at the one at the top. What at first glance seems to be one button is in fact a clever attempt to make something simpler that doesn't work. It is in fact one button on the left to download and a drop down on the right to choose the file format for what you're downloading. Yeah, trying to be clever doesn't work. I guarantee that a large portion of people attempt to do that will have a bit of a fiddle. It should have been like the one at the bottom where you just present the two options for the two formats. Okay, finally some quick takeaways. Okay, I've covered the process. Know your audience. Common sense, but so many websites do not behave in a way that recognizes the fact that there are different audiences with different needs. Point I made earlier, I think on the passport site, always think of the interactions about how often they're going to be used. If you've got an interaction that is used infrequently, then when you're balancing simplicity against configurability, don't make that configurable. If people don't use it often, they're not going to bother learning and using the configuration. They don't need it. Just make it easy. Conversely, if you have an interaction that people will be using all of the time, the same person, so they get to know it, then introduce some flexibility, some options for it, and allow them to tune it in a way that it works better for them. So it's that balance of simplicity against flexibility. If you're building an interactive model, don't overdo it. You just need to build unique examples of the user journeys, the interactions, and the content. Don't try. You're not building an actual website; it's a model. So don't try and have it always return the correct content in the search, because you'll make a rod for your own back, and you don't need to do it. Testing, I covered that earlier. It's important. If you can't get budget for formal usability testing, just test it with some friends, with some other staff, a few people. Just get them to play with the interactive model. Feedback, you will learn something, and make that change to the model. Don't wait until it's been built or designed, because then changes are 5, 10 or 100 times more expensive, certainly once it's been built and deployed. Some of you may have heard of Nielsen Norman Group. If you haven't, they're probably recognized as, well, they're the governors when it comes to usability, human-machine interactions, and so on. They have been doing research, proper research into this for a long time. So they're a good, useful research resource. Don't be afraid to use add-ins for things that have to be done, but can be done the same way on different websites, because it doesn't. Sorry, I'll rephrase that, and I'll give you an example. If you want to make websites accessibility, there are lots of tools now that put in a little accessibility toolbar that takes it a long way there. In fact, I'll show you one. I'm not necessarily promoting this one. This is Recite Me. It's just we happen to have used it with a website we launched recently, and we liked it. So this is Smart Energy website. They are focused on the rollout of smart meters. If we have a look at the top here, you'll see accessibility tools and translations. Click on that. A little toolbar appears at the top, and that's built into it. Screen readers, which you can control. You can control, change the size of the font, color contrast for people with different degrees of color blindness, dictionary lookup, multilingual, lots of little tools. Works very well. You don't have to build this stuff yourself, just use the plugin and it works well. Doesn't have to be Recite Me. There's lots of them out there and they're relatively inexpensive. The same for sharing widgets and so on. Final point, again, should be common sense, but a lot of people get it wrong. Be cautious about any expertise you feel you have, because if you're an expert in a subject, then you lose objectivity. It's impossible. It happens to me. I look at a website, I know about websites, I look at them, I might think this would work better like that, but I use websites a lot. I know I've looked behind the curtain. I have to double check how I'm thinking and place myself in the viewpoint, the standpoint of someone that doesn't use websites as much or has got certain other challenges. So yeah. Okay, I think that's pretty much from me. So over to you, Stella.
Thank you very much for that, Salvo. So lastly, as part of today's webinar, we have a free consultation offer. We are offering a free UX review of your website, so you're able to have a chat with one of our experts to discuss where you can improve your user experiences and increase your customer engagement. So please feel free to contact us if you're interested in that. Please, if you could go to the next slide, Salvo. Perfect. So before we finish, I just want to say thank you all very much for attending this webinar, and we hope you found it useful. We'll be getting in touch with you all with a recording of the session, and please feel free to contact us using the details on the screen with any questions you may have following this webinar, and we'll be very happy to answer these for you. As I've also just mentioned, if you want to have a chat with one of our experts, including the very lovely Salvo, about UX, we would be happy to sit down and chat with you about it. So do contact us if you're interested in that. And that is all from us for now. We hope you have a great rest of the week, and we will hopefully see you in the next one. Thank you very much.